Welcome. Today is our Relax into Health, Wealth, and Happiness meeting, and it's nice to have you here. Today, I would like to talk about a strange subject, which is this motif that appears in two of my favorite books. One of them is the Tripura Rahasya, and the other is the Yoga Vashishta. And both of these have this rather odd, I mean, they have many, but both of them have many odd things, but both of them have this one particular odd thing that I'd like to talk about today, which is that there's this character in both of them who has a universe inside of a hill. And I've talked about this once before. I don't actually recall off the top of my head the version that's in the Yoga Vasishta. They're different stories, but there's a commonality to them. The one from the Tripura Rahasya, I remember a bit better. And in that one, there's this there's a yogi and his son, and then some princes, and the princes. I don't remember the reason for their visit to the yogi and his son, but whatever the reason, one of the princes becomes very interested in this in the yogic powers of the yogi and his son, and I remember why. Is because the his entire army is vanquished by this army that comes out of a hill, and he's so he's very impressed by this, and he's talking to the son, the son of the yogi, and he says, "What on earth has just happened here?" And the son says, "Well, that was my army from my universe inside the hill." And so the prince says, "Well, you mean you have a universe inside of a hill? That sounds a bit crazy to me, honestly, but I've just witnessed that your army from your hill defeated my army. So tell me more about it." And so it's explained to him, and he says, "Well, that sounds really interesting, but can you show it to me?" And so he says, "Well, sure, I could show it to you. It's a bit difficult, but I can do it." So he brings the prince into the hill and shows him around. And sure enough, inside the hill, he's got an entire universe. And so everything that's outside is also inside. The meaning inside the hill is the whole cosmos is there. The the whole universe, the galaxies, the stars, the planets, all the divine and semi-divine beings. So everyone's there. Everything is there. Not as a copy of what's outside, but an independent reality. And this son of the yogi he's the lord of this universe. It's all under his command. And so they spend some amount of time in there. It seems like a short amount of time. And then the prince says, "Okay, this is great, but now let's go back outside of the hill." And so they come back outside of the hill, and everything has changed, because a short time inside the hill is translated into an enormous amount of time outside the hill, thousands and thousands of years. So that everything is different. The landscape is different, and certainly all of the people that this prince knew are now long dead. And so the prince is lamenting, "Oh, woe is me, I've got nothing now. All of all of my relatives are gone, all of my friends are gone. I don't know anything here." So it seems like a strange story, perhaps. This is the reason that I originally picked up the Tripura Rahasya was, well, I guess the actual reason I picked it up was because that was, we'll say, it was divinely guided, I suppose. But the reason that I thought that I got it was because I had read that it was often it was a book that, or a scripture that Ramana Maharshi often referenced, which got my interest. So I got the book and I read it, and it's a fascinating book. I recommend it. But I want to talk about this strange story today because, you know, on hearing it, we might think, what does this have to do with anything? Who cares? What a weird story. It's some sort of science fiction, and it's pointless, and it doesn't have anything to do with my life. Couldn't possibly be valuable. But if you were to read the Tripura Rahasya or the Yoga Vashishta or any of these Indian scriptures, well, I suppose any scripture really. I mean, take the Christian Bible as another, filled with strange stories. But they they're filled with these strange stories, and so then they perhaps can prompt us to reflect upon them and consider how what are these strange stories and how do they relate to our lives? What is the instruction here? What is it? What is the value that it holds? How could this possibly help me in my life? And so maybe there's one correct interpretation. Maybe there are many correct interpretations. I don't know. I can give you, will present to you today one possible interpretation that I am suggesting has some value that can help us in our lives. So if we consider, what is this hill? Well, perhaps the hill is yourself. And you say, well, what does that mean? Myself, this body, my mind, my personality, what are we talking about? Well, let's just keep it loose and say yourself. So the hill is this boundary that defines, there's an inside and an outside, right? We can, from the outside, you can see a hill. You can say, there's the hill. So there's something about this hill from the outside that distinguishes it so that you can recognize it and say, there it is, there's the hill. And then there's an inside to the hill. So the hill really is that which forms the boundary between the inside and the outside. And so outside of the hill is a universe, and inside of the hill is a universe. And both universes are complete. What's the relationship between the two? Well, we could say that we could maybe imagine that the inside universe is contained within the outside universe. That's one way to understand it. Maybe that's an incorrect way to understand it. Maybe the universe inside the hill is just another universe, and the universe outside the hill is a different universe, and the hill is just that boundary between them. Or maybe the universe inside the hill is actually the universe that is the superset that contains the universe outside the hill. We could view it any of these ways, or we could see it any which way, but we can see that there are these two universes, one outside the hill and one inside the hill. As usual, a lot of words going on just to say a very simple thing, right? There's a hill. The hill defines an outside universe and an inside universe. So I'm proposing that similarly, we say there's a self. I say, okay, I am, right? And this I am that I imagine myself, like the hill, it's this somewhat difficult to define thing, but we could say that it defines a boundary between what's inside and what's outside. So outside of the self is this apparent universe, and inside the self is a universe. So hopefully you're with me on this. You can look outside and say, look, there's a universe. All of this is out here. Whatever, however we describe it, we call it an objective universe or a material universe or whatever we want to call it, but there's a universe. And then inside the self, and what does that mean, inside and outside? Again, it's all a bit loose, but if we just take the self to be that which defines the boundary between these two universes, we can start to see, yeah, there is an inner universe. So the outer universe, we all can maybe say we share that as far as it goes. But the inner universe, who has access to that universe? Only you do. Nobody else has access to that universe. I mean, if we were to follow this story, take it somewhat literally, maybe we could understand that possibly maybe there's some possibility of bringing somebody else inside of our universe. I don't know. Maybe that's a special yogic power. But apart from that, the inner universe is, you're the only one, at least of these outer characters, you're the only one who has access to it. Hopefully you're with me on this. Inner and outer universes. The inner universe you have access to, but I don't have access to your inner universe. You don't have access to my inner universe. But you know that your inner universe exists because you visit there. You are there, in some sense, you're there all the time. So now, what this story is, one way to understand the story, it's pointing this out to us. It's just pointing and showing us, okay, look, you have an inner universe and there's an outer universe. And isn't this interesting, first of all? And then also, possibly, something is suggested by the fact that this army from the inner universe can vanquish the outer army. Maybe. Again, we could understand this any number of ways, but possibly what's being suggested is that the inner universe is more powerful than the outer universe. And that inner universe actually has the ability to extend itself outside and and that its power can extend outside of it. So that the inner universe can reach into the outer universe and exert power there. Okay, so now the inner universe is complete. It has everything there. So, and the structure of that is the same basic structure as we see in the outer universe. So even though we may not have the senses developed yet to be able to see what's on the inner universe, we could develop those senses. But even if we haven't developed those senses, what's being suggested, I'll propose, is that if we were to just look at what's outside, we would see something of the structure of what's inside. And so that could be useful to us. In other words, another way to understand this is that nature is the overarching reality, and that nature has a structure, and that structure of nature is seen outside and inside. So even though the particulars of what's inside and outside may be different, the structure taken on the whole in broad strokes is the same because it's defined by nature. Hopefully this is somewhat making sense. Now, you might not yet see how this has any value or applies to your life, but hopefully the simple concepts that I'm proposing at least make sense so far. If not, you can feel free to type in the chat and tell me this seems crazy and it doesn't make any sense. Or if you have a specific question, you can type it there. But okay, so now we have the inner universe and outer universe, and both of them have a similar structure, right? So the inner universe in this story, the prince is taken into the hill, and in the hill, he sees that all of the same structure that's seen on the outside exists in this inner universe. So all of the gods that exist on the outside exist on the inside, and all of the celestial bodies that exist on the outside exist on the inside, and everything's operating by the same basic principles, outside and inside. But the specific details of things are different on the content, how it's organized in the inside is different than outside. So the structure is the same. Imagine, on the outside we have the sun and the moon and the earth. Okay, on the inside there's the sun and the moon and the earth. They're doing the same, have the same basic relationship inside and outside, but what, maybe on the inside, on the outside we see the sun and it's golden. Maybe on the inside we see the sun, maybe it's red, just as a possibility. And the outside, we, the earth is populated by whatever it's populated by. Okay. On the inside, maybe the earth is populated differently. So again, the structure is the same. The specific details of the content may be different because why? There's an independence of these universes in that regard. And I've also proposed that maybe this story is suggesting that the power of the inside it can be extended outside, right? Because in the story, the army from the inside of the hill comes out and vanquishes the army of the prince on the outside. So I'm just proposing that maybe what's suggested is the inside, the inner universe has great power that can be extended to the outside. Okay. Also, in the story, the time scales are different. So remember, I said that the prince and the son of the yogi enter into the hill, and they go on a short tour, or it seems like a short tour, seems like minutes or days, and then they come out, and apparently an enormous amount of time has elapsed on the outside. So here's what's suggested is that the time scale of the inner universe and the outer universe are different. And perhaps specifically that what seems to be a short time on the inside is a long time on the outside. So this is just sort of setting the stage for, now again, what does this have to, how can this be useful or valuable? So maybe you would agree that most people orient themselves to the outer universe. So they say, what happens on the outside, that is the most important thing. That's my real reality. That's how I determine the reality and value of everything else. So, and most people will say, what do they say? They say, I'll believe it when I see it. So there's this idea for most people, and therefore we live in this kind of atmosphere where we have a tendency, if we're not really conscious, to be swayed by this common mode of perception, belief system that would have us believing that the outer universe is the real reality, and that even if there's some lip service given to the notion that there is an inner reality, it can't be that important compared to the outer reality. The outer reality is the real one. That's the one that really matters. That's our frame of reference. For anything to actually count, that's where it has to be. And that's where the real power is, etc. And so if you don't agree with that, then you're delusional. That's what I'm proposing, is the kind of normal way of seeing things. But maybe what's being suggested here is that that might not be right. Maybe that is maybe seeing things in that way is harmful to us. Maybe it causes us pain and suffering. So we could look and see then, is there a different way of seeing it? Okay. So now it's up to us, I suppose, to do with this what we will. And I'm going to propose some things to you for your consideration. So I'll propose to you that the inner universe is, you are the Lord or Lady, if you will, of your inner universe. Now, most of us don't probably behave in that way, and most of us may have some reluctance to accept that role and responsibility. We may say, wait a second, that sounds a bit uncomfortable, suspicious. I don't know about that. Okay. But I'm going to propose that. I'm going to propose that you have an inner universe and you are the Lord or Lady of your, however you want to think of it, of your inner universe. And that's true whether you acknowledge that or not. Now, if you don't acknowledge that, then what's going to happen is, well, there'll be some relative chaos or apparent chaos in your inner universe, and there's no one who's taking the responsibility, or if there is, doesn't seem to be you. So you become so you are a character in your inner universe, right? You could perhaps see that, right? You have a relationship to your inner universe, whether it's conscious or not. There is a relationship that you have there. And so if you're not accepting your responsibility and role as the Lord or Lady of your inner universe, then you're going to perceive yourself to be a victim to some degree in relation to your inner universe. In other words, if you're feeling bad, you say, oh, feeling bad. Like that's being done to you. So whatever's happening in the inner universe, if you don't take the responsibility, then you, to some degree, perceive yourself to be a victim of that. And like I say, you have a relationship to the inner universe. You really can't avoid that. You could deny it, but it doesn't actually make it to change the fact that you have that relationship to the inner universe. You can't ever fully divorce yourself from it. So I believe certainly a useful way to understand what's being suggested by this story, that this son of the yogi is the lord of this universe inside the hill, is that here is this place where one actually can rightfully take the role of being the Lord of the universe. And so this is something for our consideration. Maybe we might want to consider how we relate to our inner universe And is that truthful? Okay, that's one thing. I'll also suggest that this that we do. There is a, a a relationship between the inner and the outer that is not where the balance of power is not evenly distributed. So true that the outer can have influence on the inner, right? I mean, somebody outwardly says something, and they say, "Attaboy, you're a winner, you did it," and you feel good. Or they say, "What a jerk! What a loser! How could you do that?" And you start feeling bad. So there's an influence, yes, but as I'm suggesting, the balance of power is not evenly distributed, because actually the in this story it's suggested that the army from the inside the hill defeats the army on the outside. So the the balance of power is unevenly distributed in favor of the inner universe, and it has this capacity to extend itself and its reach outside, um, in a way that is greater than the inverse. Okay, so my ability to influence the outer universe is greater than the outer universe's ability to influence my inner universe. And we don't always experience it that way, but the capacity is such that I have greater capacity for influencing the outer than the outer has for influencing the inner. This is just for your consideration. You may not agree with it, but I'm suggesting it to you because I believe that it's valuable and that it will help you in your life, that it will help you to experience truth in your life. Okay. And maybe we'll be able to define that a little bit better momentarily. Maybe not. We'll see if we can get around to it. But so far, just to recap, I'm suggesting that that you have a relationship to the inner universe, whether you accept it or acknowledge it or not, but you can never separate yourself from that or change that. You fundamentally do have a relationship with it, and what I'm suggesting, at least, is that the correct relationship, the authentic relationship, the one that is truthful, is that you are the Lord or Lady of the inner universe, and that the and if you shirk that, then you will perceive yourself to be a victim to some degree of your inner universe, but that's not actually truthful. That's what I'm suggesting. So I'm saying that I believe that if you embrace that responsibility and that role, because it is truthful, this will be profitable to you, and it will help you on the path of truth, so that you will experience that truth at all levels, that it will help you to feel better, to be clearer, to accomplish your goals, and to have your goals in alignment with the truth. Okay. And the second thing I'm suggesting is that there is a greater capacity for the inner to influence the outer than for the outer to influence the inner. We may not always see that or recognize that or accept that, but that is, I'm suggesting, that is actually inherent. Okay. So another thing is that the time scales are different. Now, this isn't, I think this is probably of all of the things, this is, at least for me, the easiest point to verify. Okay. And I've suggested this before, so this won't be new. But think about this. If you want, assuming you're not presently in China, if you wanted to travel to China, it would take you some time on the outside. On your outer universe, if you want to travel to China, assuming you're not already in China, it will take you some time. You'll have to go and choose your means of transportation, arrange it, and then actually do the journey. And that will take however long it will take, hours, days, weeks. It will take some amount of time. Now, in comparison, in your inner universe, right now, just imagine, close your eyes and just imagine that you have traveled to China, and notice how long does that take? No time. It's so instantaneous that no time whatsoever is required. So look at the enormous difference in timescales between the inner universe and the outer universe. If you want to travel to China in the outer universe, it takes a long time relative to how long it takes on the inner universe because it's instantaneous. Now, all of this, you still might say, what is the value of this? Who cares? But remember, I found out about the Tripura Rahasya because it was suggested that this was one of Ramana's favorite scriptures to reference. Probably not the favorite, but one of them. And Ramana is somebody who I have enormous respect for, to put it mildly. And so that definitely got my interest. So when I read it, if it seems a bit, like crazy, then on the one hand, I could just say, oh, this is just crazy. Just sort of dismiss it. But since Ramana recommends it, then I say, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be so quick to dismiss it. So so I'm suggesting this to you because as I'm describing all of this, you might think, this is crazy. Why is Joey talking about this stupid story about the universe inside of a hill and a prince and his yogi and his son and one army vanquishing another? It's like, who cares? This is stupid. But I'm proposing it has value, and we have to receive it at a level other than the way that we normally do things in our life, because the way we normally do things in our life is extremely limited and really keeps us boxed in and stuck to a large degree. But if we receive this, this speaking to us in a different language, it's speaking to us through the language of story, and that's it's talk about different not time scales, but different scales. When you have a story, it takes a huge amounts of information on working on all different levels, and it kind of compresses it into this tiny package, and then that is planted inside of you like a seed, and then it starts to unpack, and you'll see, if you work with the stories, then they have this effect that they'll start to grow inside of you. And so everything that's inside of it starts to open up inside of you and takes root inside of you. And so then it's almost like this universe where if we say, okay, here's a universe that's a good one, And we want to put that inside. You say, well, I would like to have that universe inside me. Maybe my universe is not as good as I'd like it to be. I'd like to have that universe. Well, maybe we take that universe and we put it into a seed form, and then you take that seed form inside of you and you let it grow. And that's what the story does. So if you just let this work in that way, instead of taking it like bits and pieces and trying to, the way we normally try to do it, I would suggest, is we try to analyze and then synthesize. And I'm saying that that's an inefficient way. And so we won't get great results that way, but we'll get much better results if we take the seed and we ingest it, and then we let it work inside of us and unpack and grow and take root inside of us. Then we get that living reality rather than the dead thing that's incomplete anyway when we analyze and synthesize. Hopefully that makes sense. So the stories are very powerful, even if they're told poorly, as I usually tell them poorly. But even poorly told, the stories are enormously powerful. And the stranger the story, in some ways, the better, right? Because if you have a really strange story, then it really works on you. You start puzzling over it. What does this mean? What is this strange thing about this hill with an army inside of it and a prince and a son of a yogi who go inside of the hill, and time scales are different, and they come out and the prince is all lamenting the loss, supposedly. So it seems strange. So if you let that story in, then it starts to, and you accept that there's value there. Ramana has recommended it. Joey has recommended it. Maybe you say, maybe there's something to it. I'll take it on. Just try it out, even though it seems weird. So the story is very powerful. And so I'm just saying, take it in that way. Don't try and understand it all at an analytical level first. That will come maybe in time, but that's a secondary effect. At first, just take the whole thing and then accept that it has value and let it work. Then the magic will happen. So this, okay, but time scales, this is an interesting one, that the time scales are different. Well, this is true, right? So we've already kind of just seen this, that if I want to go to China on the outside, it takes a long time. If I want to go to China on the inside, it's instantaneous. So time scales are different. And why does that matter, though? Well, think about it. If you want to do something, if you want to accomplish something, and you just do it on the outside, in the outer universe, then it will take you a very long time, because you're going to do it and then you're going to get feedback. Hopefully you'll learn from the feedback, then you'll do something else, hopefully improved from the feedback that you just got. Then you'll get more feedback from what you've just done, and you repeat this cycle, right? So this is a basic learning process. You do something, you get feedback, you do more, you get more feedback, you keep doing this, repeating, doing feedback, and hopefully, if you're alert and receptive and have some moderate or above average intelligence, you'll improve. Okay. But because the time scale is relatively quite slow, that learning process is also very slow. Well, on the inside, this is sped up incredibly, which means that the learning process is sped up. And this isn't just some wild claim either, right? I mean, this is actually something that's been substantiated in many fields, that visualizing is very powerful, right? So if a professional athlete wants to improve, there's a real limit to what they can do just through outer practice, right? Because the body will fatigue. the senses fatigue. So everything fatigues, and you can't get the feedback anymore because everything's too fatigued. But through visualization, the improvement continues. And so this has been shown many, many, many times over that visualization is powerful for improving. So we can learn through our inner universe, and that learning has many advantages over learning in the outer universe. And this is not to discount the value of learning in the outer universe as well, possibly. But just to say that the difference in timescales is advantageous for in the inner universe. So if we want to learn, if we want to grow, if we want to achieve anything that we want to do, it will be much more efficient to have our focus on the inner universe rather than on the outer universe. For multiple reasons, but one of the reasons being the difference in timescales. So again, whatever I'm doing on the inside, the timescale is such that it's relative to the outside. I get huge leverage because I seems like a few days on the inside, but it's the equivalent of thousands of years on the outside. So all right. So this is maybe interesting, maybe boring. I don't know. I mean, hopefully it's interesting, but still the question might be, but how do I, is there a practical application of all this? What do I do? Do I just read strange stories and then keep my fingers crossed and hope that things in my life get better? What does one do with all this? Well, yeah, you could do that. That would maybe be useful. But also, a specific application of this particular story is that anything that you want to do, just notice where your attention is and what your frame of reference is, and see, is it on the outer universe? Probably mostly is. And then ask yourself, how satisfied are you with the results that you're getting? And if you're completely satisfied with the results you're getting, then I suppose you could just keep on doing what you're doing. That's would make sense. Although you might get better results if you shifted your attention to the inner universe. But hey, if you're completely satisfied, just whatever, you're not motivated to do anything different. So just keep doing what you're doing because it seems to be working well enough. However, if you're not completely satisfied, or if it's like one of those things, are you very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, somewhat dissatisfied, or very dissatisfied? And if you're anything other than very satisfied, then the invitation is consider that you might get better results if you shifted your attention and frame of reference to the inner universe. So see if I can communicate this, because it's to me, it seems like a really, really important point and somewhat subtle, not incredibly subtle, but somewhat subtle, but a very important point. So if it's not obvious to you at first, then stay with it and keep trying, because I sincerely believe this will be valuable to you. I try not to waste your time. The so what do I mean when I say your frame of reference? If your frame of reference is on the outside, what I mean is that if your concern is what's happening on the outside, your judgments of and interpretations of the outer events, experiences, perception, etc., labels, meanings that you assign to all of it. You say, this is good, this is bad, I like it, I don't like it, it's going well, it's going poorly. If your attention, your focus is on the outer experience in that regard, then what I'm suggesting to you is that you are shooting yourself in the foot, as it were, metaphorically, that you're really limiting yourself, you're working inefficiently and causing yourself unnecessary distress, pain, and suffering. And what you'll probably notice in that case is that the reason that your attention and focus stays on the outer, your frame of reference stays on the outer, is because you're afraid to do anything else. Well, maybe at first because you don't even accept or believe or perceive that there is anything else. But then even once you can see that there is something else, the reason you would keep your attention on the outer is because you're afraid to take your attention away from that and put it on the inner. And what I mean by that is, let's say, well, you just imagine you try to apply it to your life. Okay, so take something, and if anybody has any specific example that you want to offer up in the chat, then please do. But I'll just use some other, I'll use my own examples that hopefully you can translate for yourself. But think about what are the difficulties that you experience in your life? The things where you say, I would really like to I'd really like to change this. I'd really like it to be better, but I don't seem to be able to do that. I just keep seeming to be defeated every time I attempt any change here. So, it could be examples, could be your finances, if you just keep struggling with finances, or particular relationship dynamics or particular relationships, or physical symptoms that somebody's suggesting. So it could be pain, strain, discomfort, digestive distress or discomfort, fatigue. Okay, so any of these kinds of things, I'm sure there are plenty of other kinds of examples that we could come up with, but that's a pretty good assortment, I would say. Okay, so if you think about these kinds of challenges that maybe you experience or face in your life, and you say, why is this not getting better? I've tried all these things, I tried the expert advice, I did this, I bought that gadget, I did this exercise, I read that book, I followed that plan, did all of these things. Why is it not getting better? Should get better. I read all the testimonials of all the other people who got results. Why am I not getting the results that I want? And then the mind starts to do all kinds of things with that, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Sour grapes is a good one. It says, all those people are liars. It's not, there's no good in life at all. Everything's just going to go to hell anyway. Who cares, etc. But there's something in us that won't fully let go because we're in pain, we're suffering, and we don't want to. And somehow, on some level, we know that something else is available to us, but we don't fully know where or how to find it or accept it and receive that. And what I'm suggesting here is that it's our clinging to the outer focus or frame of reference that keeps that cycle in place. And so if we are willing to shift our attention in our frame of reference to the inner and be persistent about that, then we will get different results. Persistence is key, because if we just do it for just once and just for 5 seconds, and then we shift our attention back to the outer, it's not going to, it will revert most likely. But if we're willing to keep the attention shifted to the inner, with the frame of reference being on the inner, then the grip on the outer loosens, and we start to actually fully align ourselves with the inner. We start to fully accept our role as the Lord or Lady of the inner universe. And then things start to be put in order in the inner in a way that will begin to really create a powerful influence that extends to the outer as well. So let's use a specific example. Let's say digestive discomfort, some kind of chronic digestive thing. Okay. And so the person has tried all of these things and then some, and none of them have given adequate results. Okay, so notice, step one would be notice that the attention is on the outer. So there, what I mean by that is that there are labels, there are stories that are being told, they're all referencing this outer experience where I say, well, this has been like this, and it felt like this, and then, had these symptoms that occurred, and it happened day after day after day, and this is all on the outer. And it all has labels and stories assigned to it, and I know what all that means. Then you say, okay, but is there an inner, is there an inner reality? Is there an inner universe? And at first, it may not be clear what that even means, or that there is. And so this just takes some continuing to look until it starts to get clearer that there is an inner universe. And then once it starts to be seen that there is an inner universe, still the tendency is to place the attention and frame of reference on the outside, not on the inside. So we don't tend to linger for long on the inside. And because we're not lingering for long on the inside, we don't accept the responsibility and the role as the Lord or Lady of this inner universe. And so things don't fundamentally change because nobody's taking responsibility for it. So this is what can happen. And then to see that what is the reason for that failure to stay with the inner? Why does the attention continue to shift to the outer, even once it's seen that I'm not getting good results that way? Why do I keep putting my attention out there? And I'm proposing the reason is fear. Fear that if I don't keep putting my attention out there, that I'm going to lose ground. Things are going to get worse. If I don't keep on doing all of the things that I'm doing out there, keeping all of my attention out there, somehow things are going to get worse. I'm going to lose my ground. So just seeing that that's the case, that there's a fear that keeps that vicious cycle going. Then it requires a willingness to say, I am going to just go, I'm going to just, even if by force, I'm going to keep my attention on the inside. I'm going to align myself to the inner universe, and I'm going to begin to see how I shirk my responsibility in the inner universe. What does that mean? Well, I look and I just start to see I can't see this until I keep my attention in the inner universe. As long as my attention keeps going to the outer, then I won't be able to see this. It requires persistently keeping the attention on the inside, because I have to be able to watch it for long enough to be able to see something about the inner. When I keep my attention here and I'm asking myself this question: how am I shirking my responsibility? So just start to see, well, every time there is a certain kind of impulse, I run away. Every time there's a certain kind of impulse, I collapse. Every time there's a certain kind of impulse, I freak out inside. Just start to see that all it takes is just an impulse. There's a little impulse, and then it sort of explodes into this fearful inner picture that says, I can't, I'm failing, I'm dying, I'm too weak, I'm being overcome. Probably lots of other variations that I'm not thinking of, or maybe these are just the particular flavors that are for me. Maybe you have your own, but just start to see that just on the inner, forget about the outer, just on the inner universe, there's just a little impulse. You can't even quite detect what it is. It's just this little tiny shift of something. And you just give up. Say, I can't, I'm not the Lord or Lady here. I'm a victim. And you run away, or whatever your particular strategy is. Okay, so you see that, and then just start to ask yourself, what, why do I, is that even necessary? What if I don't do that? So this is starting to accept your responsibility. Like, you think about, what is that? What does it mean to be a lord or lady of a universe? You have to be the one who stands your ground. You don't run away. Whatever comes, you think about this, whatever it is that comes, you remain. You won't be vanquished. You just stay there. Whatever it is, it comes, the demons and demon armies and whatever else, comes, you just remain. In fact, you get to a point you won't even flinch. That's what it means. When the demon armies can do their worst and you don't even flinch, that's what it means to be the Lord or Lady of the universe. So the practice, as I guess is what I'm proposing here, the practice is just to do that, just to stand your ground, to inwardly, forget about outwardly. You can't give your attention to that right now. Right now, I'm just saying, you have to start to see, when I keep my attention on the outside, I remain in this vicious cycle. So I'm going to courageously, or stupidly, depending on how you look at it, but I'm gonna just go all in and give all of my attention and interest and frame of reference to the inner universe. And I'm going to be really, really interested in how I shirk my responsibility as Lord or Lady of this inner universe. And I'm just going to watch and just see how it happens. And the more I watch, the more, with this intention, the more that I cease to flinch. So then I'm actually accepting that role and responsibility as Lord or Lady of my inner universe. And pretty soon it becomes true. Now, once that's true, then, well, that's enormous. That's huge. What a great thing that is, right? Because before, I was running terrified every time there was any little impulse, anything. I was a big fraidy cat. And now I remain here unflinching, calm. So that's a huge change already. But then in addition to that, what's possible is, but it only is possible from this position. I can't, I have to get to this position first where I can be unflinching in my role in the inner universe. Then I can actually begin to give order and structure, order to the inner universe. Perhaps not structure, but the order, maybe structure, maybe that's even possible, but definitely order. I can start to say, I would really like, I'd like a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that. This, you start to actually give some shape to it all. What, don't you suppose that could be possible and desirable? I mean, if you're the lord or lady of your inner universe, why would you not? Why would you not make it? Why would you not play and make it pleasing to you? But again, it's only possible once you're in that position and accepting that role and responsibility. So the sequence of events that I'm proposing is, first of all, to see and be at least curious about what has been said, and then to start to see that maybe it's true that there's some value here, that and see that when I keep my attention and frame of reference on the outer, then it keeps me in vicious cycles. So just apply this where it hurts. I mean, forget it. You don't need to do it anywhere else. Just where it hurts, where you're clearly stuck in vicious cycles. Just choose one to start, and then start to see, just challenge yourself. You say, okay, with this one thing, whatever the one thing is, and you can define that as big or small as you want. Make it workable for you. The one thing, this one thing, that every time this one thing happens, every time I experience this one type of anxiety or fear or distress or pain or discomfort or whatever it is, that will prompt me to begin this process where I look and I see, okay, yes, my attention is on the outer. Let me start to notice the inner. Notice that there is an inner universe. Once I can start to see that there's an inner universe, let me keep my attention and frame of reference on the inner, so that I'm no longer concerning myself as regarding this one particular thing, however you define that. I'm going to just keep my attention on the inner. What do I mean by that is, whatever the thing is you define. So if it's the digestive distress, or it's the financial issue, or it's the particular relationship thing, or what the particular ache or pain, whatever that one thing is. So I'm not, to begin with, we're not taking everything because that would be too much, but just the one thing, and you can make the scope as small as necessary so that it's workable for you. You take that one thing and you commit every time that this one thing occurs, I'm going to go through this process. I'm going to see that there is an inner universe. I'm going to commit to keeping my attention with the inner universe. And I'm going to see, how is it that I shirk my responsibility as the lord or lady of my inner universe? And I'm going to begin to stand my ground calmly, unflinchingly. And once I can do that, so that these things are no longer spooking me, I no longer run away because of this little impulse. Now I can actually begin to shape my inner universe. So then I can actually start to choose, what do I want? Well, what do you want? You want happiness, joy, peace, health, abundance, prosperity, but inner experience in your inner universe, right? So you start to visualize, feel, perceive, and experience that as a reality in your inner universe. But again, you can't jump there right away. You've got to, well, maybe you could, but I'm proposing go through this sequence. So once you can stand your ground unflinchingly as the Lord or Lady of your inner universe as regards this one issue, then you can begin to actually shape your inner universe by according to your desire, so that you cultivate that which you truly desire. You actually start to generate that inner experience, strengthen it, grow it, nourish it, and then you'll start to see that it begins to it takes root in the inner universe. It becomes very real in the inner universe, and then it actually will extend to the outer universe. But the perhaps bizarre thing about this is that you don't at that point you don't even particularly care. So it's not about getting the outer results. The outer results just happen as a consequence. It's a byproduct. So that's it, as usual. A lot of words. I did say it would be strange, I think. Hopefully hopefully I delivered on that promise that it would be strange. And that's it. So I hope that you will take it to heart and explore that and get the value out of it. I hope the same for me. I hope that I will take it to heart and put it into practice and get the value out of it. I'm sure I will. and and that you will discover that your inner universe is much more expansive and richer and more beautiful than you had thought, and that it's more real than you had thought. And so I'll end it there. And for those who are here live, happy to stay on for Q&A if you'd like.